The great hall of the Zalorian Empire shone with silver walls, tall banners, and guards standing in perfect rows. Alien nobles gathered there, whispering and laughing, waiting for the Emperor's judgment on a matter that most of them found amusing. At the center stood Princess Serenia, her head bowed low, her golden crown dim under the bright lights. Serenia was not like the other heirs of the Empire. She was graceful, beautiful, and intelligent. But there was one truth that followed her. Like a shadow, she was infertile. The alien healers had declared long ago that she could never bear a child. For her people, that meant she could never give the Empire an heir, never strengthen alliances through marriage, never serve her dynasty the way tradition demanded. To the nobles, her value had dropped to nothing. To them, she was not a princess of glory, but a burden, a reminder of failure. That day, a group of smug nobles presented their idea to the Emperor. Their words carried both mockery and false respect. "Great Emperor," one of them said, bowing. "Since the princess cannot serve her duty among us, perhaps it is best she be given away. Let her not waste space in the palace." The Emperor narrowed his eyes. "And to whom do you suggest I give my daughter?" The noble smirked. "To a human. Let them keep her. It will be a gift. No, a joke. The humans admire us so much. Surely they will take her, even if she is broken." The hall erupted in cruel laughter. Humans were seen as primitive, weak creatures barely worth notice. They were used as laborers and assistants across the Empire, useful for small tasks but never respected. Serenia's fists tightened, but she said nothing. She had learned long ago that her voice meant little in such places. Her fate was always in the hands of others. The Emperor's gaze shifted to her. There was no love in his eyes, only cold calculation. "So be it," he said finally. "If my nobles find this amusing, let the humans have her. Perhaps she will find peace in obscurity." The hall cheered as if a great joke had been made. Serenia kept her head down, hiding the pain in her eyes. Days later, Serenia was escorted out of the palace in a small craft. No ceremony, no farewell, no kindness, just guards who handed her over as if she were an unwanted package. Her heart was heavy, her pride shattered. Her destination was a research station orbiting a quiet planet. Humans worked there under alien supervision, running experiments and maintaining equipment. Among them was Ethan Ward, a mid-level scientist and engineer. Ethan was not special in rank or wealth. He was just a man who had grown used to being underestimated. To aliens, humans were background workers, rarely worth notice. Ethan had learned to keep his head down and focus on his work. When the guards delivered Serenia to him, Ethan was stunned. A princess? Given to him? It made no sense. The lead guard sneered as he pushed her forward. "She is yours now, human. Do what you want. It matters not." Ethan's brow furrowed. He looked at Serenia. Tall, graceful, her silver blue skin glowing faintly in the station light. But her eyes were filled with shame, as if she carried the weight of the stars on her shoulders. "I don't understand," Ethan said carefully. "Why is she here?" "Because she is useless," the guard said coldly. "Your kind can keep her as a prize. Consider it a gift from the Empire." With that, the guards left, their laughter echoing down the corridor. For a long moment, silence filled the air. Serenia did not look at Ethan. She stood rigid, as if waiting for more humiliation. But Ethan only sighed softly and scratched the back of his neck. "Well, welcome, I guess. I'm Ethan." She blinked, surprised by his tone. He did not mock her. He did not laugh. He sounded normal. "I am Princess Serenia of the Zalorian Empire," she said quietly, her voice stiff with formality. "Right," Ethan said, nodding. Well, Princess Serenia, I don't know what you've been told, but here nobody's royalty. We're just people trying to get through the day without breaking something important. A faint flicker of confusion crossed her face. No titles? No bowing? No shame? Ethan gestured to the corridor. Come on, I'll show you around. You'll need a room. The human station was nothing like the shining palace Serenia had known. The walls were plain, the halls narrow, the rooms simple. Yet there was something strangely warm about it. People laughed as they worked, shared meals, and told stories. No one bowed to anyone else. Ethan gave her a small room with a bed, desk, and window that looked out into the stars. To Serenia, it was far smaller than the chambers she once had, but for the first time, the space felt her own. Over the next few days, Ethan treated her not as a joke or burden, but as a person. He asked if she needed help settling in. He showed her how the station systems worked. When she was quiet, he did not push. When she seemed lost, he offered gentle guidance. At first, Serenia kept her distance. She had been raised to believe humans were beneath her. Yet Ethan's behavior confused her. He never acted afraid of her title, nor did he use it against her. One evening, she finally asked, "Do you not find it strange that a princess has been given to you like some discarded object?" Ethan looked at her for a long moment before answering. Strange? Yeah. Cruel? Definitely. But I don't see you as an object, Serenia. You're a person, and people deserve respect. Her chest tightened at his words. No one in the palace had ever spoken to her like that. But I am infertile, she whispered, the word heavy on her tongue. To my people, I am worthless. Ethan frowned. Worthless? Because of that? That's ridiculous. A person's value isn't measured by what they can or can't do with their body. It's measured by who they are. Her eyes widened. She stared at him as if he had spoken an alien language. To her people, worth was tied only to power, lineage, and children. But Ethan spoke with such certainty, as if kindness itself was enough to give someone value. For the first time in many years, Serenia felt something she thought she had lost forever. Hope. That night, she sat by the window of her small room, staring at the stars. In her mind, she heard the cruel laughter of the nobles, the cold voice of her father, the mocking tone of the guards. But over those voices rose Ethan's simple words. You're a person, and people deserve respect. The Empire had given her away as a prank, but perhaps, just perhaps, fate had given her something else. Someone who saw her not as broken, but as whole. Life on the human research station was not easy, but it was simple. The air smelled faintly of recycled filters, the food was plain, and the walls were dull gray. To most aliens, such a place would feel poor and uncomfortable. To Serenia, who had once lived in grand palaces, it felt small and strange. But slowly, she began to notice something else. On the station, people smiled. They laughed at jokes, teased each other kindly, and shared meals without thinking of rank or status. Nobody bowed when the commander walked past. Nobody whispered, behind her back, about her infertility. For the first time in her life, Serenia was just another face in a small community. At first, she resisted. She stayed in her room, quiet and stiff, holding on to her royal manners. But Ethan was patient. Every morning he knocked on her door. "Breakfast is ready," he would say. "You should join us." Most days she refused. But one day, hunger pushed her out of her room. She followed Ethan into the mess hall, where the humans were already eating. The food was simple: warm bread, eggs, fruit from hydroponic farms. Nothing compared to the jeweled banquets of her empire. But as she sat down, something unexpected happened. "Good morning, Princess," a young human technician said cheerfully. Serenia stiffened. She expected mockery. But the technician only smiled warmly, sliding a tray toward her. Here, I saved the last orange for you. They're rare out here. Serenia blinked. A gift? Not as mockery, but as kindness? She slowly accepted it. The orange was sweet, its flavor sharp and alive. She had never tasted anything so simple, yet it filled her chest with warmth. For the first time, she smiled. Over the following weeks, Serenia began to explore the station more. Ethan showed her the labs where humans studied alien samples and energy systems. He explained machines she had never seen before, speaking in simple terms so she could understand. "You humans, you adapt so quickly," she said one evening, watching him repair a broken circuit board with improvised tools. "My people would never waste time with such crude fixes. They would demand a perfect replacement." Ethan grinned. "Well, we don't always have perfect options, so we make do. That's what humans are good at. We make things work, even when they shouldn't." His words stuck in her mind. We make things work. To her people, problems that couldn't be solved perfectly were abandoned. But humans, they tried anyway. That night, she sat by her window, thinking of her own life. She had been declared infertile, broken, and useless. Her people had given up on her. But what if humans would not? One evening, after a long day of observing experiments, Serenia and Ethan sat together in the common lounge. The humans were telling stories, funny tales from Earth, legends of explorers, even embarrassing childhood moments. The room was filled with laughter. Serenia listened quietly, then asked softly, "Why do you share such unimportant things? Stories of mistakes, of foolishness?" Ethan smiled. "Because they make us human. Our stories remind us that life isn't just about duty or success. It's about connection." Serenia tilted her head. "Connection?" "Yeah," Ethan said. "We share our lives, even the silly parts, because it makes us closer. Nobody is perfect. That's okay." For a moment, Serenia felt something break inside her, like a wall she had carried all her life. In her empire, weakness was shameful, mistakes were punished, and stories were only about victories. But here, weakness was accepted, even cherished. That night she laughed for the first time in years. Days turned into weeks. Serenia began to help in the labs, curious about human science. She had no training, but she learned quickly. She asked questions, and Ethan explained patiently. One day, as she studied a human biology textbook, she froze. Her eyes widened as she read about fertility treatments, methods humans use to help couples have children even when natural ways failed. "In vitro fertilization?" she murmured. Ethan looked up from his work. "Yeah, IVF. It's one of our ways to help with infertility." She turned to him, her voice shaking. Humans can fix it?" Ethan frowned gently. "Sometimes, not always. But we have options. Medicine, technology, even adoption, ways to become parents without needing everything to be perfect." Serenia stared at him, her heart pounding. For her entire life, she had been told she was hopeless, broken beyond repair. Yet here was a human, speaking casually about possibilities her people had never considered. "Why? Why did no one tell me this?" she whispered. Ethan's face softened. "Maybe because they didn't want to see you as more than your problem. But I do." Her throat tightened. She had no words. For the first time, she felt a flicker of hope. A dangerous, precious thing. One evening, Serenia finally opened her heart. She sat across from Ethan, her hands trembling. "In my world," she said slowly, "a woman without children is nothing. My father gave me away because I was useless. Do you not see me the same way?" Ethan looked at her firmly. "No, I don't. Serenia, your worth isn't tied to children or titles or what people expect of you. You're valuable because you're you. Because you think, feel, and live. That's enough." her eyes filled with tears. Aliens of her kind rarely cried, but she could not stop herself. No one had ever spoken to her like this. "You do not understand," she whispered. "I am broken." "No," Ethan said softly, reaching across the table. "You're human enough." Her heart shook at those words, human enough. In that moment, something shifted between them. The wall of titles and shame fell away, and all that remained was a man and a woman, two souls reaching for each other in the darkness of space. Serenia began spending every day with Ethan. Together they studied her condition, comparing alien, medical records with human research. She learned about genetics, hormones, and cellular science. Ethan encouraged her questions, treating her not as a patient, but as a partner. As weeks passed, Serenia grew stronger. She was no longer the discarded princess. She was a student, a researcher, a companion. The station lights were dim as Ethan sat at his desk, papers and screens spread around him. Charts of DNA sequences, medical notes, and alien physiology studies covered every surface. His eyes were tired, but he didn't stop. Across from him sat Serenia, her silver-blue skin glowing faintly under the lamp. She too was exhausted, but there was a fire in her eyes that had never been there before. For weeks, the two had worked side by side. What began as simple curiosity had grown into something more, a search for answers. Serenia wanted to know if her infertility truly was hopeless, or if human knowledge could prove her empire wrong. Ethan wanted to help her, not just as a scientist, but as a friend who could not stand to see her live in despair. On the screen before them glowed a set of genetic patterns. Ethan leaned forward, pointing at the lines. "Here," he said softly. "This is the part your doctors missed. Your people's. Biology depends on a single chain of proteins. If that chain doesn't form perfectly, they declare it impossible. But in humans..." He pulled up another chart. "We have 100 ways to fix small errors. Our cells adapt. We find new paths." Serenia's breath caught. "So, I am not broken?" Ethan gave her a tired smile. "No, you're not broken. You're just different. And different doesn't mean hopeless." Her hands trembled. For years, she had lived under the weight of shame, told she was worthless. Now, for the first time, she saw proof that maybe, just maybe, she was not beyond saving. They began experiments, not cruel or dangerous, just careful studies, mixing human methods with alien data. Serenia learned to handle delicate tools, to read the glowing screens, to run tests she had once thought only for scientists. Ethan guided her patiently, never rushing, always explaining. One night, after a long session, Serenia looked up from the microscope. "Ethan," she said softly, "why do you help me so much? I am only a burden to you. My own people gave me away." Ethan leaned back, folding his arms. "Because you're not a burden, Serenia. You're someone who deserves a chance. Everyone does." Her eyes softened. "Even a princess cast out as a joke?" "Especially a princess cast out as a joke," Ethan said with a grin. For the first time, she laughed through her tears. Weeks turned into months. Progress was slow, but each step gave Serenia more hope. She learned about human fertility treatments, IVF, genetic repair, even surrogacy. She discovered that humans did not measure worth by one's ability to give birth. Parents could adopt children and love them as their own. Families were built from love, not only blood, yet Serenia still longed for the chance to carry a child herself. It was not only about proving her people wrong, it was about proving to herself that she was whole. One evening, Ethan sat with her in the quiet of the lab. "I think we're ready to try," he said carefully. "Your body can't follow the natural process, but with our technology, we can guide it. We can give it a chance." Her heart raced. "You mean it is possible?" He nodded. "Possible, not guaranteed. but worth trying. Serenia closed her eyes, her hands trembling. All her life she had been told never to hope. Hope was dangerous. Hope was foolish. But sitting across from Ethan, she realized she had already been hoping for months. And now, that hope had a shape, a path. "Yes," she whispered. "Let us try." The preparation was long and delicate. Ethan mixed human IVF techniques with alien biotechnology, creating a hybrid method no one had ever attempted. Serenia underwent treatments carefully monitored by both machines and Ethan's watchful eyes. The first attempt failed. Serenia cried, silently in her room, thinking it was proof she was cursed. But Ethan sat beside her, speaking gently. "Failure doesn't mean the end," he said. "It means we're one step closer. We try again." The second attempt failed as well. Serenia nearly gave up, but Ethan's determination never wavered. "You told me once," he reminded her, "that your people give up when things are not perfect. But humans, we keep trying. That's what makes us strong. Don't stop now." His words lit a fire in her. She wiped her tears and returned to the lab. On the third attempt, something changed. The machines beeped softly, displaying results. Serenia could hardly believe. She stared at the screen, her eyes wide. "Ethan, is it—" Ethan's smile grew slowly, then burst into laughter of relief. "Yes, it worked. You're pregnant." Her heart stopped. Pregnant. The word echoed in her mind like music. She pressed her hands to her stomach, tears spilling down her cheeks. For years, she had been told she was nothing. And now, life grew inside her. She collapsed into Ethan's arms, sobbing. "Thank you," she whispered over and over. "Thank you." Ethan held her gently, his voice warm. "No, Serenia, thank you for trusting me, for believing." The pregnancy was not easy. Serenia's body was not used to the process, and complications arose. She grew weak at times, her strength fading. But Ethan never left her side. He stayed up nights watching over her, adjusting treatments, speaking softly to calm her fears. The humans on the station rallied around her as well. They brought her food, checked on her health, told her stories to make her laugh. For the first time in her life, Serenia felt surrounded by a family. Each day, she felt the life within her grow. Each day, her hope grew stronger. One night, as she sat with Ethan by the window, she whispered, "Do you realize what this means? If my people learn of this, everything will change. They will see that humans did what they could not." Ethan nodded. "Yeah, and they'll see that you're not broken. You never were." She turned to him, her eyes shining with tears. "You gave me back my future, Ethan. You gave me back myself." He shook his head with a small smile. "No, Serenia. You found it yourself. I just stood by your side." Her heart warmed at his words. She realized then that this man, this simple human they had mocked, was more noble than any alien lord she had ever known. Months later, the moment came. With difficulty, with struggle, with tears and cries, Serenia gave birth to a healthy child. The cry of her newborn filled the station, echoing through its metal halls like the song of victory. The humans cheered, their voices full of joy. Ethan's eyes shone with pride as he placed the child in her trembling arms. Serenia looked down at the tiny face, so fragile yet so alive. The child's skin was a gentle mix of her silver blue and human tones. Its small hands reached up, curling around her finger. Tears streamed down Serenia's face as she whispered, "My child, my miracle." For the first time in her life, she felt truly whole. The Empire had given her away as a joke, certain she would live in shame and obscurity. But here, in the arms of a human, surrounded by laughter and hope, she had done the impossible. She was no longer the infertile princess. She was a mother. The Zalorian palace was as bright and cold as ever, its silver towers rising into the sky like blades. Inside, nobles gathered in the great hall, their robes shining with jewels, their voices dripping with arrogance. They were speaking, as they often did, about power, politics, and heirs. It had been over a year since Princess Serenia had been cast out, given to humans as a cruel joke. Most of the nobles had already forgotten her. To them, she was nothing more than a memory of failure. But that day, whispers spread through the palace like fire. The discarded princess returns. She dares to show her face again? Why, now, after so long? The great hall filled quickly. Curiosity burned in every alien's eyes. The emperor sat upon his high throne, his expression unreadable. He had not thought of Serenia in months. To him, she had been a closed chapter, a mistake, quietly erased. But now, she had asked for an audience, and he had agreed, mostly to witness her humiliation once more. The doors opened. The sound of footsteps echoed through the hall. And there she was, Princess Serenia. But she was not the same woman they had, thrown away. She walked tall, her eyes steady, her head held high. She wore no crown, no jewels, no imperial robes. Instead, she carried something far more powerful in her arms, a child. The hall fell into stunned silence. Every noble froze, their mocking words dying on their tongues. The emperor leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "What is this?" he demanded. Serenia's voice was calm, steady, and strong. "This, father, is my child." Gasps filled the chamber. The nobles erupted in whispers. "Impossible!" "She was infertile. A trick! It must be a trick!" One of the high lords stepped forward, his voice dripping with anger. "You dare bring lies into this hall? No Zalorian doctor could repair your failure. You seek to deceive us." Serenia raised her chin. "No deception, no lies. I carry in my arms proof that your science, your arrogance was wrong." She shifted the child gently. The infant stirred, its small hands curling, its soft cry filling the hall. The sound struck every noble like thunder. Serenia's eyes burned with fire. "You cast me aside as a joke. You mocked me, abandoned me, yet it was not you who gave me hope. It was humanity." The word humanity fell heavy in the air. The nobles hissed in disgust. The idea that a human had succeeded where the great empire had failed was unthinkable. The emperor's face darkened. "You claim a human did this?" Serenia's voice rang like steel. "Yes, Ethan Ward, a man you would call primitive, weak, unworthy. Yet it was he who treated me with dignity. He who showed me another way. He who helped me where your empire only mocked me." She stepped forward, holding the child for all to see. Its features were unmistakable, a blend of human and Zalorian, proof that two worlds had joined where one had declared it impossible. "This child," Serenia said firmly, "is the future you tried to deny me. A future built not by arrogance, but by compassion. Not by cruelty, but by hope." The hall exploded in noise. Nobles shouted in anger, some in disbelief, others in fear. The idea that humans, those they had considered little more than servants, could accomplish what Zalorian science could not shook them to their core. "Blasphemy!" one cried. "She brings impurity into our bloodline." "No," another shouted. "Do you not see? If it is possible, then all we knew was wrong." The emperor slammed his staff against the floor, silencing the room. His eyes were sharp, his voice heavy. "Bring the child to me." Serenia hesitated. Her grip tightened protectively around her baby. But then she stepped forward, her steps steady. She stopped before the throne and gently raised the child toward her father. The emperor stared down at the infant. For a long time, he said nothing. The child's small eyes opened, shining faintly with both human warmth and Zalorian glow. The Emperor, who had thought himself unshakable, felt something stir deep in his chest. "This should not be possible," he whispered. "It is," Serenia replied, "and it was made possible by those you mocked, by humans." The hall was silent again. Every noble leaned forward, waiting for the Emperor's judgment. Finally, the Emperor leaned back in his throne. His gaze was unreadable, but his voice was low and heavy. "Leave us, all of you." The nobles gasped, but obeyed. Slowly, the hall emptied until only Serenia, her child, and the Emperor remained. For a long time, the two said nothing. Father and daughter stood in silence, the air heavy with memories of betrayal and pain. At last, the Emperor spoke. "You shame me!" Serenia's heart clenched, but she stood her ground. And yet, the Emperor continued slowly, "You humble me. For all my power, for all the Empire's glory, it was not us who gave you this gift. It was the humans. Perhaps we are not as great as we believed." Serenia's eyes softened. "Father, I am not here to shame you. I am here to show you that there is another way. My child is not a symbol of weakness. He is proof of possibility. Proof that even the impossible can be achieved if we set aside pride." The Emperor's gaze lingered on the baby. Slowly, very slowly, his hard expression softened. "You were cast out as a failure," he said quietly. "Yet you return with the future in your arms. Perhaps I was wrong." Serenia's voice trembled, but she spoke firmly. "Yes, Father, you were." When the nobles were allowed back into the hall, they found the Emperor seated in silence, his daughter at his side, her child in her arms. The whispers began again. "What will this mean? If humans can do this, what else are they capable of? Everything we believed about them, was it a lie?" The Empire, once so certain of its superiority, now faced a truth they could not ignore. Serenia stood tall, her voice carrying across the hall. "You gave me away as a prank, but I return as a mother. You laughed at humans. Now you will respect them. For where your arrogance failed, their compassion succeeded." Her words struck like lightning. That night, whispers of her return spread beyond the palace, into the streets, into other worlds. The story of the infertile princess who returned with a child reached the ears of commoners and nobles alike. And at the center of it all was not just Serenia, but humanity. For the first time, humans were no longer spoken of as weak or primitive. They were spoken of as something far more dangerous to arrogance, a people of possibility. As Serenia lay, in her chambers later, her child asleep beside her, Ethan entered quietly. He had come with her, though he stood back during the royal confrontation. "You did well today," Ethan said softly. Serenia smiled, exhaustion in her eyes but pride in her heart. "No," she whispered. "We did well. Together." She looked, down at her child and then back at Ethan. "They will never see humans the same way again." Ethan shrugged lightly. "Good. About time." They both laughed quietly, their hearts heavy with the knowledge that the future was changing, not just for them, but for two entire civilizations. The palace of Zalor, once cold and unyielding, seemed different now. Its silver walls still gleamed, but there was a new sense of quiet awe in the air. News of Princess Serenia's return and the birth of her child had spread quickly throughout the Empire. Wherever humans went, whispers followed them. They did what our scientists could not. The nobles, once arrogant and dismissive, now eyed humans with curiosity, caution, and even respect. The Empire had begun to realize that strength was not only measured by bloodline or tradition, it was also measured by courage. compassion, and intelligence. Serenia walked through the halls with her child in her arms, her steps steady, confident, and proud. Beside her walked Ethan, silent yet ever-present, guiding and protecting her. They were no longer outsiders or joke, recipients. They were witnesses of possibility, living proof that the Empire's pride could be challenged and changed. The Emperor summoned the court to a grand ceremony. For the first time, humans were invited, not as laborers, not as assistants, but as honored guests. Serenia stood at the center, the infant resting against her chest, its tiny fingers curling around her hand. The room was full, the air heavy, with anticipation. The nobles murmured nervously, unsure how to react. Some looked at her with jealousy, others with fear, but all were forced to acknowledge the reality. This child was a symbol of what the Empire had failed to achieve on its own. The Emperor rose, his voice echoing through the grand hall. Today, we witness something extraordinary. Our Empire has always valued strength, lineage, and power. Yet we have been humbled. Princess Serenia, once cast aside, has returned with a gift no one could have imagined. He gestured to the child. This child is not merely a member of the royal line. This child is a bridge between worlds, a bridge built by humans, forged with courage and respect. Let this day mark the beginning of a new era. Serenia felt tears prick her eyes. The Emperor had acknowledged not only her child, but also the humans who had helped her achieve the impossible. She looked down at the infant, tiny and perfect, and whispered, "You are more than a child, little one. You are hope." Ethan stood beside her quietly. "You did this," he said softly. "Not just for you, but for everyone who believed in something better." She smiled. "We did this." In the following months, life at the palace began to change. The humans who worked on Zalor stations were now respected members of the court. They advised the nobles, taught them new technologies, and shared knowledge that had once been dismissed as inferior. Slowly, the Empire began to see value in what it had once ignored. Serenia continued to learn and grow as a mother. She watched her child take first steps, speak first words, and respond with laughter and curiosity. Every milestone was celebrated not just by her, but by humans and Zalorians alike. The child became a living reminder that compassion and courage could triumph over arrogance. One day, as Serenia held her child under the palace's silver spires, a young noble approached her. He was timid, uncertain, yet clearly curious. "Princess," he said, bowing slightly. I wanted to ask, how is it that humans could achieve what our greatest scientists could not?" Serenia looked down at him, her expression calm but firm. "Because humans see the world differently. They do not measure value by tradition alone. They believe in trying, in learning, in caring. They believe that no one is beyond hope." The young noble's eyes widened. "And that is something we must learn?" Serenia nodded. "Yes, we must. Because strength without compassion is meaningless. Power without love is hollow. And hope is what will carry our empire forward." As the years passed, Serenia's child grew strong, intelligent, and curious. The child was taught by humans and Zalorians alike, learning both the knowledge of the Empire and the compassion of humanity. The child became a symbol of unity, often seen walking through palace corridors hand in hand with young humans, laughing and learning together. The nobles who once mocked Serenia now bowed to her child, recognizing not only the royal bloodline, but also the lessons it represented. Even the Emperor, older now, often smiled proudly as he watched the child interact with humans freely, breaking barriers that had lasted for generations. Serenia herself became a respected figure across the Empire. She used her position not to demand power, but to teach understanding. She traveled to distant planets, bringing humans and Zalorians together in education, trade, and cultural exchange. Wherever she went, stories of her journey, once the infertile princess, now a mother and bridge builder, were told with admiration. Ethan continued by her side, quietly ensuring that the lessons of cooperation and humility spread alongside their influence. Together, they showed the Empire that partnership and respect could achieve more than domination and fear. One evening, Serenia and Ethan sat in the palace gardens, watching their child play with a group of young humans and Zalorians. The sun, reflected off the silver walls, casting warm light over the garden. "Look at them," Ethan said softly. "All of them together. You did this." Serenia shook her head, smiling. "We did this. We gave them hope. We showed them that change is possible." The child ran toward them, laughing, arms outstretched. Serenia scooped the child up, holding them close. "You see?" she whispered. "This is the future. This is what matters. Not crowns, not titles, not fear, but love, respect, and courage." Ethan nodded, smiling. "And humans are finally being seen for who we are." The Zalorian Empire had been shaken to its core. The nobles learned that tradition alone could not measure value. The people learned that humans, once considered weak and primitive, could achieve greatness that rivaled any empire. And Serenia, once cast aside as a joke, became the greatest teacher of all, that hope, courage, and love can overturn even the harshest judgments. Her child, the living bridge between two worlds, grew to symbolize unity, possibility, and change. Wherever the child went, humans and Zalorians alike followed, learning together, growing together, and imagining a future that had once seemed impossible. Serenia held her child close that night, looking out at the silver towers of the palace. She felt a deep sense of peace. Her past, once filled with humiliation and pain, was behind her. The present was filled with hope and the future. The future was in the hands of her child and the humans and Zalorians who had learned to walk together. In that moment, Serenia whispered quietly but with conviction, "I was cast away, but now we rise together."